gosh.
Yeah, I'm just turning it on so I don't forget it.
No problem.
That's awesome. I could just see it like a crate, like the fencing. And it looks
Like
like a
Jurassic Park.
yeah, like electric fence, and it's like, oh, you must have like a scary velociraptor. Nope, it's a baby goat.
One baby goat.
One goat to rule them all.
That's what he thinks anyway.
So,
thankfully, the three girls are really nice. And he's
yes.
nice too. He's just pesky. He's not mean. He's just, hey, Mom, what you doing? Oh, you opened your car door? I think I'm going to try to get in. Oh, the house. Let's see what the living room's like. Oh, gosh.
Oh, this is a really nice Turkish rug. I'm going to take a poop on it.
Yeah. Well, it's bad when I told one of my coworkers when he had let himself in the house, when the goat let himself in, I was like, oh my gosh, you are not going to believe what happened at my house yesterday. And without batting an eye, the math teacher looks at me and he says, your goat got in the house. He hadn't done it before, but he guessed exactly what had happened. I'm like, yes, that is what happened.
He probably heard plenty of stories about Hercules, like it was only a matter of time.
Exactly. Next thing you know, he'll be driving to work. Who knows?
Hey, she's Labor Day. If you can drive me to work, let's go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. How's the husband doing?
He is doing really well. I got to spend 3 days with him. Now, their visits 4 hours at a time,
right,
in like a cafeteria. So don't anybody get too excited thinking I got 3 straight days with my husband. And it was not a long time, but it was nice because we actually got to spend the visit on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday together. And Sunday was his birthday. So It was just a really nice time. We had a really good time talking about the future and making plans and just getting to spend time together. It was good.
How many years does he have left?
He has a little less than 3 years before his earliest out date could be.
And if he doesn't get himself in trouble, which seems like he's doing a good job about it, he might actually be let go that time.
He should. Yeah, he's never had a write-up or anything. He's never had any conduct violations. So he should be good to go. But then again, we never know for sure how that's going to work because we've seen them keep guys who weren't causing any problems in past their potential outdate. And we've seen guys who are just the biggest pieces of crap that are always getting in trouble out. So who knows?
Yeah, the system sees, I joke with a lot of people. I say, it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and that's not always the best thing in the world, but that's how the system works.
Well, and also you have to wonder, do they think that the people who are pieces of crap are going to come back in? So sure, we can let you out because you're going to be back in and our numbers will still be good.
Yeah, you'll be back in like 6 months kind of thing.
Yeah. But so we're hopeful. Keith hasn't given them any reason to not let him out at the 85% mark. So that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah. I think they should. I would say, I think I'm not there, so I'm just assuming. But yeah, there shouldn't be a reason for them to hold him any longer. Because it's a state one, or is it a private prison he's in?
It's state. Yeah.
Because I think private prisons are slowly being phased out anyways.
I think they are too. But I know that people think that private prisons are the worst, but state prisons aren't that awesome either. So it's still a moneymaker for some people.
Oh yeah, it's especially like the corporations, like the ham company, whatever it is, the telecom company that does all the calling. Oh, there's like so many different nuances.
Canteen. Yeah, the canteen. But see, what then gets even more complicated is that in Missouri, there's something called MVE, Missouri Vocational Enterprises. And that's where they have their cabinetry shop, all paper printing, all kinds of stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. And the laundry. And it sounds great. Okay, so the inmates are getting vocational training. That's really good. And then they make products and it gets sold and goes back into the state till, so they're kind of keeping, earning their keep.
Right.
But that's not what happens. Missouri Vocational Enterprises is a private entity. And so they use inmates and they use state prison facilities as their workforce, and they pay pennies an hour for their employees. But all those profits, the millions, and it is millions of dollars of profit that they make, goes to the private company. It doesn't go back to the state.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've even heard in Florida they use the prisoners for ranches. It's like Florida and Georgia still, and pay them pennies on pennies an hour
for private profit.
Yep.
And there are members of the legislature that are on, corrections committees and things like that, that also own stock in canteen fund companies and stuff like that. So, yeah, people are making money off of it, even though it's a public, state prison.
They probably have to pay like something small, like 2-3% of whatever they earn back to the state, kind of like a nonprofit does.
They don't have to pay anything. Nothing goes back in the state till. They pay the inmates, but that's it.
What is it, like $10 a day or something? There's like Philippine wages, or is it worse?
Oh, it's worse. Keith works. Now he's not an MVE. He works actually at the canteen, which is the prison store, and he works 40 hours a week, full time, and he makes $40 a month.
A month?
That's $10 a week.
Holy shit, that is about the same as the Philippines, because they were telling me they make the equivalents of like $2 or $3 a day.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And people think we're all out of slavery and this and that. It's still fucking happening.
The Constitution actually says that slavery was abolished except for people who are incarcerated. Read the 13th Amendment.
I mean, okay. While we're talking on that, I'm going to have to pull it up on my phone because I'm like, wait a minute.
Yep. It is the truth.
So was that because they wanted... Well, also back then, prisoners were truly like violent, vile people against the state. I mean, we have a whole new level of crime, like your husband, that they didn't even know about back then.
Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there it is. Okay.
I speak the truth, Josh.
Yes, you do. That's interesting. Wow. But honestly, there's too much profit to be made for companies now that to try to pull that out of the system, there's going to be a massive revolt, especially in the corporations.
Well, and when you consider the lobbyist money that's paid to legislators and the sweet deals that are made so that people get jobs after they get out of office and things like that, there's the people who are supposed to be the gatekeepers overseeing what these state departments, like the Department of Corrections, if they're actually benefiting from the sales and from the way the system is now, the people who are supposed to be there safeguarding our tax dollars, they're not worried about safeguarding our tax dollars.
Oh, God, no. I learned that a while ago, especially being here in California. They were trying to build this super speed rail from like San Diego all the way to like San Francisco. It's like a 500-mile gap, I think. They ran out of money about 2 cities in. And they're like, whoop. They're like, whoops. Oh, well, we just paid all our contractors, I guess, too much money. We'll try again next time.
Oopsie. Yeah. It's pretty rotten the way it works. But anyway, I appreciate you asking about Keith. He's doing pretty well.
That's awesome.
So that makes me happy. I can breathe a whole lot easier knowing that he's in a fairly safe and stable situation right now. We've had our times when he wasn't. So
Yeah, like, especially depending on the prisoners, it might be one of those interesting ones. He's like, "Ooh, don't know what's going to happen next."
yeah, there's been some ugly things that have gone on systemically in the past relating to us, and so he's finally things are pretty smooth right now. So that's good.
That's wonderful. And then you wrote your book too.
Oh, the new one. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it actually came together a whole lot faster than what I thought it would.
What
And
is it?
last year, Into the Night, my science fiction and paranormal collection came out, and we talked then.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of funny because I hadn't done a whole lot of writing. I'd done some for the podcast because the voice actress who does the podcast, the Into the Night pod, she
Mhm.
would be like, "Hey, do you have any more stories to send here? I only have a couple left." And so I go, "Okay, yeah, I'll write." But my heart wasn't in it as much. And then this summer, in about July, all of a sudden the switch flipped, and I wrote half the book from in like a month and a half. Like the stories just came. So we went ahead and published it.
Nice. So did you? How many words is it? That the final word count for it?
It is like 91 or 92,000.
Wow, that's actually a pretty big book.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good stuff. So no, it's a little 100-page novella or anything like that. It's actually a book. But the stories were fun to write, and it was almost as though they just wanted to come out. And another author and I were talking the other day. He actually did a video conference with my creative writing class at school. And Sean Burgess is a horror writer. He wrote The Tear Collector, and his new book just came out, The Ghosts of Greek Hollow. I don't know if you heard that, but I just got pelted. My car got pelted.
I heard it. I was like, "What the heck?"
Acorns. Um, yeah. Um, but we were talking, and uh, okay, now I've lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
The horror guy, the tears, and
Oh, the
then the
stories just wanting to come out. Yeah, the stories just wanting to come out. And he and I both agree that we don't really buy into the concept of writer's block, because we think that a lot of times it's either undue pressure that a writer is putting on themselves that they have to be producing or they're a failure,
Mhm.
or some people use it as a crutch, as an excuse. Oh, that's why I'm not writing, because I have writer's block, as though it's an excuse not to write. We both kind of believe that when there's a story that wants to come out, it comes out. You might be up at 2 o'clock in the morning writing it because you have to tell the story.
Yeah, and
Or
if you
you
don't
might
sit
go
down,
for,
it's gonna go away.
yeah, and you might go 3 weeks and not write anything, but then two more stories want to come along and be told. So I think that's a healthier attitude to have than this feeling that you have to produce, you have to write a certain number of words every day, because to me, that sounds too much like work and responsibility. And I have enough responsibilities in life that I don't need to take something that's supposed to be creative and fun and have a spark to it and make it drudgery, because I'm afraid it would lose the, I don't know, the magic or the enthusiasm behind it. And if it feels like a chore for me to write it, my fear is that my readers wouldn't enjoy it either, because it would feel dull or flat, like it was being forced. And so I like to have that spontaneity and the excitement of me enjoying writing it, the same as I'm hoping my readers are enjoying reading it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a few times, like especially recent books, um, it seems like the author's like, I have to keep churning out at least one book a year, or otherwise I'm gonna go broke, kind of thing, and they're just writing to get content out. Just
And
yeah, you can feel it in the words.
you can. And I think we've all read some of the books of some of the popular greats out there that after a while, it just seems formulaic. Like there's no inspiration or ingenuity to it. It's just, oh, we're going to change the character names and plug this in. It becomes kind of like the stereotypical romance, book
Yeah.
where, just plug in a new exotic location and another problem that some woman has and that a guy solves and blah, blah, blah,
A little
And
bit drama,
I know
tension, but
that
inevitably, yeah. Sorry.
it's the same as 14 other books that they've written. And I know one of the big name authors, I won't mention him, but he's a well known, like, crime writer, thriller kind of guy. Keith noticed when he was reading it that on the same page, the guy used the same word or phrase. It was like 4 times, which just shows you're not even paying attention. Your editing isn't even happening. Like even the publishing house just wanted to churn out the work to meet their contracts and their deadlines and to sell books. And I think that there's something that it cheapens the whole process if you're more worried about, you know, turning out quantity versus quality, I think.
It's not Jordan Peterson, but it's an author that sounds similar. Johnson or something. Is it that guy you're going for?
No,
Okay.
no. I don't want to slam somebody by name on this, but it was shocking enough that, Keith has been around me writing long enough and he has started to get an eye for what
What's what?
shouldn't be in a work. And he's like, honey, you wouldn't believe this. He said the same thing 4 times on the page. And it wasn't like for emphasis. It was just using the same phrase.
That's really sloppy. I would say if he even hired an editor, they did a very shoddy job.
Exactly. So somebody at the publishing house dropped the ball too.
Yeah, because they have someone screen the book to make sure it's good, and then usually either you work it out with the publishing house, they have an editor, or you have to hire an editor on your own, kind of thing. But somehow it pans out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I just think that it's a whole lot more important to focus on keeping your stories authentic and interesting and different than ones that you've written before, just because it otherwise it's doing yourself and the readers a disservice,
Yeah,
I think.
no, I agree. Anymore, it's hard for me to pick up a new book to read because I'm like, is this going to be formulaic? Where maybe it is a original idea, but the structure there's no drama, there's no emotion behind it, there's nothing. Just they're doing it for the cash grab, like the Save the Cat, write a novel with the 15 beats. I'm not knocking because I'm going to use the
Uh-huh.
lady's beats, but it's like, oh, okay, I'll go here. The catalyst will be this and then this, but there's no whip down. It's just kind of like, okay, we're here now, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always try to with my science fiction and paranormal stories. And this book, by the way, is called When the Cowbird Sings. And it's the title of one of the stories within the fiction. And I'll explain the title in just a bit, but I always try to come up with something different. I don't write about vampires. I don't write about werewolves because I feel like those have been beaten in the ground. I think there's plenty of things that can be found scary or exciting that aren't those two things. And I I do my best to also have people take a look at everyday things that normally they take for granted and all of a sudden put a little sinister twist to it where they're like, ooh, I never thought about that. What if that's what that really is? So to me, that's the fun in writing, is to try to make people look at the world a slightly different way than they did before they read your story.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good goal. And I think, especially me studying books and reading, that's what it seems like books were intended for. It's like give you something interesting. She's gone.
Now you disappeared for a bit.
You cut out too. You've
Can
been
you hear
glitching
me?
in and out. Yeah, I can hear you. You don't have to put the video up. I would say that
Okay.
you're coming through clearer because you were really like glitching out earlier. I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be interesting to edit.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Sorry about that.
Oh no, no, no! It's all on my end. I can hear it. So um, I'll cut all that out. You were leaving off at the. I was saying how the structuring and how books were. I think were originally intended to show us something interesting but new, to change our minds, like we were talking about before you left.
Yeah. Like for example, in Into the Night, one of the
Hmm.
stories, it's called When the Circus Came to Town. And in that story, you find out that the reason why these carnies are different is because they're actually from another planet, and they had crash landed. And so it's the story of two girls, one of the alien carnies and one just a lonely girl from the town, becoming close friends. And she finds out that her friend had crash landed, and that's why they were stuck on Earth right now. She asks her, "Well, how are you going to get home?" And she said, "Well, we'll have to fix our ship." And she goes, "But your ship? Where is your ship?" And the little carnival girl says, "Well, we take it with us everywhere we go. You've been on it." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And she told Whirl that they had modified tilt whirl so thrusters didn't go off, but the round spinning disc that everybody rides was actually a saucer. And just little things like that so that people look at the world a little bit differently than what they do.
Right. That's interesting. That is cool.
Oh, good grief. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was gonna send you the number to call in.
Okay.
Seven one.
Yeah, we might need to do that.
Because that was my next question. Like, where are you exactly? Because your signal is a little interesting.
Okay, I call. All right.
Right.
Okay, so the problem is that it's not letting me dial. Give me just a second here.
I think it's also because you're on the call too, the Zoom call itself. I was
Oh,
like, worst
okay,
come.
that might be it. Do you want me to? Should we just hang up the Zoom call?
Yeah, you can leave and then call back in. Again, I'll chop all this out.
Okay.
There she is.
All
There we
good.
go.
Okay.
I'll say, and I also sent you the phone numbers that actually work. So if for some reason it cuts out, you can click that one too.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just sitting here like Zoom's just like, no, you two cannot talk today.
I know. I was like, this is crazy, and I don't know why. Like yeah, I got a new phone a month or so ago, but my Zoom app, like the icon was gone off my phone. And so I thought, okay, I'll just reload it. And then it was like, you don't have an account anymore. And I'm like, what?
It's not just you. I've been having trouble with Zoom lately too. Like I'm
Really?
actually like I'm using my laptop because for some reason if I use my desktop, it overheats the CPU and the motherboard and it just turns itself off. So
Oh my gosh. Well, that's not good. Yeah, you don't want to cook your hard drive.
right, like this is a brand new laptop. I actually bought it for this reason, and it's like now I use it for writing too. But I'm like, man, I'm gonna because my fancy mic here it doesn't work with this laptop.
Oh no.
right? I'm like, oh man, the whole point of buying this setup is to use that. So
sometimes technology sucks.
it seems like it's stupider and stupider at times. There's certain things it's getting smarter, and other aspects it's
And it seems like some of the things that's getting smarter in are enough to make you nervous. So not sure
yeah,
that's good either.
yeah. The especially the AI where everything is going. That is clearly like a sci-fi horror film. I'm hoping never actually comes to life because the way certain things are going. Have you seen the Blade Runner series?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really,
And
I think that's more going to
it's
happen to
nerve
us.
wracking.
Oh yeah,
I know. Yeah. Well, even just the things that are annoying and concerning, like the fact that you talk to somebody about something, you're not even Googling it or anything like that, but you talk to somebody about a certain product or type of thing, and then all of a sudden you're getting ads for it.
are you
That,
Apple by the
yeah,
way?
that's not okay. Yeah, I
Okay,
am.
it's funny because my mom, she has an Apple, and I was where I live, where it's a very wealthy city, and I told her, I said, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
everyone here, like their POS card for Sundays is an Aston Martin kind of thing," and she's like, "No, it's not." And we pull into the driveway for Chili's, and lo and behold, there's an Aston Martin right next to us with like a Bugatti, a Bentley, and this. And I told her,
Oh my gosh.
and then it was just, I was joking with her. I said, "Oh, I bet you anything now you're going to get an ad for Aston Martins because you talked about it and it's new." For a few full days, she only got ads about Aston Martins.
Oh my gosh, that's concerning.
Oh yeah, and that's what I told her. I
That's
said,
a
"Oh,
little bit crazy.
I said the fact." I said the one thing you did, none of us really read until it was too late, is the terms of service for Siri. Is her always being on like the Hey Siri. Well, when she's not activated, she's still actively collecting data on you, kind of thing.
Well, way back when Gilligan's Island was on TV, there
Hmm.
was an episode where the professor was trying to get a radio to work. Like there was a radio somehow showed up, and he was trying to get the radio to work. And they're like, "Well, that's great that we can hear other people. We need to get word out to the other people." And he said, "Anything that can receive can transmit."
Hmm.
And so if you look along those lines, then sitting in your living room talking to your family about sex or something like that with your TV there, it can receive. So can it transmit too?
Hmm. Oh yeah, George Orwell's
So,
1984 is
where
creepishly
are we
coming.
headed in this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a weird hybrid that none of us really thought about. It's like a
And
George Orwell and Blade Runner combo.
and also Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. That's
I've not
becoming more and more normal.
Bradbury. What?
Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
Fahrenheit 451.
You have
Okay.
to read it if you haven't.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna write that
Yeah,
down.
you have to read Fahrenheit 451. Yeah, it's prophetic. He wrote it in, I believe, the 1950s. And some of the technology, like for example, his wife is all involved with the lives of these other people who are on the screens that take up the entire wall in their living room. Well, those are like big screen TVs, and
Oh, that would
people's
be like.
shows where people lose.
No, 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 you go. Sorry, I was talking too loud.
Um, so it's like when people get so involved in television shows or reality TV shows that they become emotionally involved in what's going on with these people, sometimes, as in her case, to the detriment of her own mental health. So there's there are some things in there that have definitely been coming to fruition in our country, in our world, as far as technology goes. And there's a scene in Fahrenheit 451 where they're after the main character. The authorities are trying to track him down. And on TV, there is a huge police chase because they say that they have found him, that they're chasing after him. They have him cornered, and the helicopters and everything are chasing, and everything's being live filmed. The problem is that he's watching this on a television. He's not the one, but in order to make the public feel better and to make it look like the government is in charge and in control and has everything, under wraps, it's some innocent guy that the authorities just decide to claim our Guy Montag. And they have their mechanical dog, which is a mechanical police dog that can kill people, kill this guy on live TV. And then it's like, oh, well, everything's great now that crazy Guy Montag has been eliminated. They just randomly picked some poor guy off the street because they needed somebody as their scapegoat.
That's interesting. So then Fahrenheit 451, Orwell, and Blade Runner, that's going to be one hell of a dystopia if that comes to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of makes you think twice about the live police chases that you see on TV.
Oh, I never believed them.
After you've read that, you're kind of like,
yeah, that's disturbing. Well, I mean, perfect example is all the social unrest that was happening during 2020 and how everything was hyper sensualized. So because everyone was at home on their phones and it was like, oh, we're just going to make this our scapegoat if it goes wrong. And you just like destroy the whole neighborhood kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's some creepy things going on in the world. But I wanted to tell you about how I came up with the title of the story and then used it for the book. When the Cowbird Sings. I don't know if you know what a cowbird is. It's a real bird, but it's a parasitic nester. And what it does is it doesn't make its own nest, but it will lay its eggs in the nests of birds so that they have to be the ones sitting on it and feeding the baby and everything. So when they put their egg in there, they'll kick one of the eggs of the host nest out. And also, when their babies hatch, they tend to be larger than the host family. Mm-hmm. And so they get more of the resources that the parents are feeding the babies. Well, if a pair of birds goes, wait a minute, this egg isn't ours, there's something wrong here, and they kick it out, the cowbirds watch and they destroy the whole nest. And so think sinister alien plot. And that's the basis for the story.
That's intense. So would it be like War of the Worlds, or is it more like a thriller?
It ends up that way. Well, okay. It ends up kind of like War of the Worlds, but it has to do with people thinking that they're actually doing a kind, charitable, helpful thing. And instead, it was just a ploy to get people to take these alien children into their homes. And it's twisted. I don't want to give away the story too much.
But you're giving some goosey stuff.
But it is definitely twisted.
That's some juicy stuff, though. I like it. I'm gonna say whenever it does come out on audio, I'm gonna listen to that. I have your book on my wish list of your Behind the Death Fences for wish list.
Inside the Death.
That's one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Inside the Death Fences. And kind of exciting news is that there is a film producer, who is interested in optioning the book. That
Optioning is
just
so he's going to make
came
a movie
about
about it.
this past week. That's his plan, yeah,
That's cool.
for Inside the Death Fences. Yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
That would be awesome. That's definitely game changing too.
It is. It definitely isn't. It's also a story that people need to see. It's important to not. I'm sorry, your connection's so bad.
Is it my connection or is your
Can you hear
connection?
me?
I can hear you.
I don't know. I'm going to drive up the road and see if I can get a better signal. I thought I was in a place that would be okay, but apparently not.
It's all good. I was just joking myself when you left. I'm like, man, there's gonna be a lot of ads for this one.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. So yeah, I don't want to distract you too much while you're driving.
Here. Oh no, it's a little dirt road. It's not.
Okay.
It's not any thoroughfare or anything like that. It's okay.
Okay. So yeah, then the guy's gonna work on getting a movie. That's awesome. Did he say anything about the back end payments for you?
Oh yeah. So that's of course going to be part of it too. So we haven't officially signed contracts yet, so I don't want to jump too much on it. But it is always nice when you've got a producer at least interested, thinking that your book is worthy of consideration. And we're supposed to have a conference call, he and the screenwriter and I, on Monday. So
Monday, what time?
I'm not sure. We haven't set the exact time yet. I know the screenwriter told him that it would have to be after I got off of work because I teach.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. I would definitely.
I'll let you know if there's any exciting news.
Yeah, you definitely you have my number now. Definitely text me and give me updates. That's
okay,
awesome.
I will.
So I want to get back to the aliens and the parasitic part of the thing, without giving too much of the details away. How do they convince the people to take in the alien kids in the story?
Foster care.
Okay. This wasn't one of those I'm sitting here like it's some like Jedi mind tricks, hypnotics. That works too.
No, just simply people wanting to do something nice for kids in need.
Interesting. So I'm just curious because it's a parasitic alien you're basing it off of. Uh, do they eventually like turn and kill the parents when they like reach of age or something?
Well, what happens? Okay, I'll go ahead and tell this story because it's kind of indicative of the types of stories that are in there. I mean, none of the other stories are exactly like this, but I chose it for the title because it set a good tone.
Okay.
Okay, so a family, a prominent family in this town, that everybody kind of wants to emulate. They have 2 children already, and they try to have more kids, but they haven't had any luck. And so they decide to take in a little girl named Miranda as their foster daughter. And she's 3 when she comes into the house.
Okay.
And sometime later, and then other people in the community are like, you know what? That's a really good idea. Our kids have gone to college. We could take a couple of kids in. And so they start, several people in the community take in all these foster kids. And then parents of who adopted Miranda who by the way, is the name of one of my best friends at work, is Miranda. And so I have them become pregnant. They end up, after she's been in the house for a little bit, they become pregnant. And all the family is very excited, and they keep, buying stuff for the nursery, and Miranda's not too happy about this. And her only response is always, I thought I was the baby. Mm-hmm. And they're going, well, of course you're our baby, but you're going to be a big sister now. But I thought I was the baby. Well, about a month before the mom is supposed to give birth, she falls down the stairs and loses the baby. And of course, Miranda's comment was, am I still the baby? And they're like, yeah, you're still our baby. And time goes by, and surprisingly, because the doctor said they didn't think she'd ever be able to have kids again, they get pregnant again. Well,
oh wow,
they're all excited about this. And and so then the daughter goes to spend, she's in high school now, goes to spend the night at one of her friends' houses, and then comes home to find the house like completely quiet and dark, and the next night, and there's blood all over. And she goes upstairs, and I need to backtrack. That summer, the grandpa who lived on a farm had taken them around on nature walk. Are you there? I'm sorry about this.
It's all good. I lost you at nature walk.
Okay. So they were on a nature walk, and grandpa was like, that's a wren, that's a chickadee. And they're like, well, what bird is that? Because they hear another one calling, and he goes, oh, those are cowbirds. I hate those. And they're like, well, why do you hate them? Because normally he loved animals. And so he explains about how they're parasitic nesters and what they'll do. So fast forward to the girl comes home. There's blood all over the place. She finds her family dead. And hovering above them with a knife when she goes upstairs is, are we good?
You were good. Hovering upstairs with a knife.
And with an eerie voice, she calls her sister, her human sister by name, and says, you humans just had to try to have another child. And so I had to destroy the nest. And she said that she couldn't, with Kyle, the boy, and then Lydia, the girl, already there, she couldn't risk the resources that would be used for her for some other child to be born. And so when her parents had insisted on having,
I would recommend turning your video off, by the way. That uses a lot of data. And I lost you at
okay, let me see how do I turn off the video?
On the phone there should be a little bar at the bottom. And then it says, I'm gonna look at mine, it says mute, stop video, security, participants, kind of thing.
There's not one.
I don't know then, because I don't have Zoom on my phone anymore. Hey Google,
okay,
how do you
I got it. Video. Okay, hey, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Actually, it's coming through much more stable too. So I lost you at the resources with the kids. Caroline, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I'm going to call you on my phone and put you on speaker for the last half so we can get that story. And then I think Zoom wants you to get along your way.
I think so too.
All right. You can leave this so your phone's good, and I'll call you on your number.
Okay. Hey, are you there?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, good.
Awesome. So left you at the parasitic uh, removing of people.
Yes, Miranda tells Lydia, the older girl, that her parents had insisted on having another baby, so she ended up having to destroy the entire nest. And the same process had been going on across the city, with couples getting pregnant and then having these losses. And now, I guess the aliens had just had enough, and there were the flashing lights, the spacecraft in the sky, and Lydia goes running for her life to escape the house, and because the aliens are destroying the nests. And when she runs into the woods, she hears the unmistakable sound of a cowbird singing.
Okay, that's creepy. So is it the actual cowbird that's singing, or is it the aliens imitating it?
So for her town right now, destroying all the nests because resources were being taken away from their children. Because the Miranda tells her, you couldn't be happy just letting us grow here. We weren't going to bother you if you just let us, for now, if you just had taken care of us. But now we have to destroy your nest.
That's so creepy. It's going to be interesting to like. I like prefer hearing it, so it'd be interesting to hear that while I'm at work and be like, I'll be texting you at 3 a.m. my time, like, oh my god, that was weird.
What you can do is that story is actually on the Into the Night anthology podcast.
The actual,
and you can find that on Spotify.
Oh, okay. Then I will have to look that up. I put that on my Audible for a podcast. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing job that she does with the stories. Neri Kwok is the narrator, and she's very good at it, and she really brings them to life.
Does she do a lot of like emphasis, pausing, dramatic flair with her voice?
Yeah,
good.
She uses different voices. Yeah, she's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you were telling me last time we were chatting that like you worked out an agreement, like she gets like half of whatever the podcast. And...
Yeah, and it's kind of fun because we actually started it during the pandemic. She's like, "What would you think of doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she said she was kind of surprised that I'd gone for it. Why, I don't know, because it's a fun thing to do. But we've just had a really good time with it.
That's awesome. So is there anything else? You have a movie producer, a new uh, awesome alien book coming out. Is there anything else you wanted to go over?
Oh, let me think. Just that I'm continuing to write. I already have story ideas for enough for 2 more anthologies coming up. I do know that the next one that I put together is going to be called A Starry Night. And it's just fun to come up with twisted ideas. I like to come up with stories and story titles and then bring them, into an actual story. There's a lot of different stories in When the Cowbird Sings. There's a couple of stories that actually have tie-ins to stories that are in Into the Night.
Okay.
So that was kind of fun to do, to have a few Easter eggs there. One's a continuation of a story that is in Into the Night, and one is the same story, but from a different person's perspective in a different area, the same story happening.
Okay.
So that was good. I enjoyed doing that too.
Those are always fun, where it's like if the author can pull it off correctly, having it in the same book too, that's fascinating. Like you read one chapter, even though it's the same thing, it's different events, different things, but the same event.
Yeah. in Into the Night, I have a story called A Marvelous Sunrise, and it's being told by the experience of this one man who was a NASA researcher. And then the same story is told by what we find out is this young astronomer that he's kind of taken under his wing. The exact same events happening, but it's more detail as to what led up to the shorter A Marvelous Sunrise, but it's happening contemporaneously. It's at the same time.
Right. That's cool. That's really cool. So is this like 10,000 words for like an hour podcast, or is it little noveletta like 25K 20 to 25K of word?
No, story is its own podcast, but it's not about 15 minutes in length.
Okay, it's not a lot of words needed. Okay.
People can listen to the stories, and there are stories on the podcast that aren't in the book, and there's going to be stories in the book that aren't on the podcast.
Right.
So, because I write all kinds of different things, I mean, there's a couple of Westerns on the podcast and things like that. That's not the focus of it, but just to do something different and fun. But for the most part, they're the science fiction and paranormal stories.
Yeah, science fiction and paranormal. It's a big, hot, trending thing to do. A lot of people want to read it.
And all my stories, no matter what genre they are, have a twist at the end that most people say, "Oh my gosh, I did not see that coming."
And then they're going to be like, "That's definitely a Caroline thing."
Yeah. There's one story that I wrote because I've got a couple of friends that I always have read my stories ahead of time, and I am not above killing off main characters. So there was this one story that my friend Linda read it, and her first reaction when she got to the end of it was she messaged me and said that, "I'm so glad you didn't kill them because I really liked them."
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I think at times authors don't like killing off the main character because they feel like, oh, they have to make it to the finish line, right?
No, they don't.
No. We've been conditioned to think that way, but no, they don't actually have to do it.
Because you know what? Sometimes life sucks, and sometimes things are not the way you would have wanted them to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's the fun in writing or reading a story where you know everybody's going to be okay at the end? I think it's more exciting for everybody involved to not be sure what the outcome is going to be.
Oh, 100%. I agree. Those are the books I like the most because, like, I tried reading a Stephen King book once, and like after about a chapter or two, I'm like, oh, I know how this is going to end. It was like this, and this, and I watched it, look up a summary, and I'm like, yep, that's exactly how it ends.
My goal is to always have people going, "What? Oh my gosh!" And I enjoy having my creative writing kids read some of my stories too, because it's just fun to get their feedback and see what they were anticipating was going to be the ending as opposed to what actually happens.
Right.
I've got a great group of kids in that class. They're very thoughtful and creative, so they're a lot of fun to teach.
Oh, I bet. Obviously, kids are also one of the best critics because they don't have any filters. They're not like, oh, we have to make the teacher feel better, so we have to say her book's good. They're going to be like, this was interesting. Why'd you put that there? Seems a little stupid to me. And you're sitting there like, oh.
Exactly. I mean, kids have no concept of white lies. They will tell you if they liked something and tell you if they didn't, and they'll tell you why they didn't like it.
Yeah. It's one of those, my instructor, I'll tie it back to that, was telling me like, oh, you're really good with kids, this and that. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a big kid at heart. The only difference between me and them was like actually like two bigger ones. I'm taller and bigger, and I have a job and a lot of money. Other than that, I'm the same.
Enjoy teaching. I love going to my school every day. I really do. I'm lucky because I've had some jobs in the past, other places where it wasn't as enjoyable.
Oh, I bet.
I'm in a really good place right now, and I genuinely love getting to school and teaching my classes.
That's awesome. That's very rare people can actually have that in life. So I'm good you have that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, for granted, I completely cherish the chance to have this be my job and my life. I really do. I've got great kids, and when we're willing to just say, yell down the hall, "I love you, Mrs. G," it's good. And it's not because I let them get away with stuff. They know I run a tight ship. And it's not because, I don't make them do anything, because they'll also at the same time complain about how much work they have. But I think that it helps kids if they want to be in a classroom. It really helps with the learning process.
Right. Yeah, I would agree, especially if there's like strict rules. If you cross this line, you get in trouble. If you cross this, you don't do this, you'll be okay. Like this clear defined rules, especially at their age. They need a boundary that's reinforced. Otherwise, they're going to be like, we're going to push this as far as we can.
Exactly. And, I told my kids, because, of course, there's times I teach high school kids. They'll say, well, this is a democracy and there's more of us. And we say, we should. And I'm like, no, guys, this is not a democracy. Within this room, it is a dictatorship.
A benevolent dictatorship, please.
A benevolent dictatorship. And they're like, what's that mean? I said, it means I'm nice, but I'm still a dictator. So my niceness stops when you go past the boundary. And they're like, yeah, okay. But then at the same time, like somebody will come in my room and they're like, wow, your kids are all really well behaved. And I'll say, yeah, they're scared of me. And the kids will laugh and say, no, we're not.
I think it's because they
what?
I thought I had you.
You're ruining my reputation. What do you mean you're not scared of me?
Be scared. Muhaha. That's funny. Yeah. I would say, is it usually the class clown that speaks up like, oh, this is a democracy kind of thing? Or is it like well, good thing they're in your class.
Believe in having humor and not having everything be super serious, because studies have actually shown that, number one, if kids have a good rapport with their teacher and they know it's a safe environment in every possible way, they'll thrive, they'll do better, they'll try harder, they'll learn. And it's also been shown that humor actually affects the brain in a way that if people are having an enjoyable time while they're doing something, they retain it better. And so I completely believe in having laughter. Now, of course, not just chaos, but like at appropriate times, laughter and using humor and being good natured and letting my kids see that I'm not perfect too. Okay, maybe I copied something wrong, or you know what I mean? It just you can't get uptight. You have to just be like, yeah, well, that happens some days. You know how it is. We all make these mistakes. And, my kids, even my freshmen who have just had me for the first time this year, already they've told me that they anticipate me having some kind of one-liner or something. And especially the awkward situations that happen in class. Like a few weeks ago, there were a bunch of junior high kids going past my outer wall, which has windows.
Mm-hmm.
And they were calling to one of the other kids in my class. And that boy's going like, oh my gosh, they should not be doing that. You know what I mean? Like he was embarrassed, but they're like, oh, hey, Cutter. And so there, I don't know, there must have been a couple of classes worth of kids going by. And I had just handed out a quiz, and everybody knows you don't talk during a quiz. Well, because of all the commotion going on outside my room, Dawson says, well, where did all these kids come from? And everybody's kind of looking at him, and they're looking at me because there's not supposed to be any talking. And there's this pregnant pause. And then I go, well, you see, when mommies and daddies love each other very much. The kids all laughed. They were like, we knew you were going to come up with something. But, it got everybody back on track, and everybody settled down and did their quiz. But, yeah, you can't, if I had come unglued at him and, bitten his head off, well, nobody would have wanted to have ever said anything in my class again.
Right. Oh, no, that's good. I'm glad you figured out that teaching style, because I wish I had that in my high school years. They were all the "you do as I say, today we will learn this and that."
On page 42, yeah. Real strict, monotone.
Oh my God, I'll gladly call him out. I went to this place, and this guy named Bracken was the econ teacher, and he had the "today, children, we will be talking about," and I'm sitting here going, my God, he's either going to break into like a Southern Baptist fire and brimstone thing, or he's going to drain everyone. It was one of those, oh my God. He taught a good lecture, but he was not entertaining at all. And anytime we laughed, we all sacrificed the chances. We all got, I think even the lady, like the stereotypical Asian student, even got in trouble because he finally got her to laugh, and it wasn't a joke. So we all got detentions. I think it was one day he was doing something, and we were talking about like the theory of cash flow and this and that. And he tried to be cute and put a little emoji on the screen. I'm like, wow, Bracken. He's like, what? I'm like, how big those eyes and nose are. They look like you. Everyone lost it. And we all had detention. But oh yeah. Oh, and that was just one of those. When I finally graduated high school, I was doing like the run around, have everyone sign it. I even had the teacher sign it. To be honest, I don't know where my yearbooks are anymore. But but my Bracken said, because I had him like freshman or junior year, so in my senior year I had him sign it, kind of thing. And he looked at me and he sat me down in his monotone, deep voice. So Josh, you're gonna do great things in life, and I'm like, okay. Kind of like what? He's like, well, I see you as either a CEO of a big company or a drug dealer. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, one's illegal and one's not. He's like, that's very subjective at best.
Pharmaceuticals.
I don't always pondered that. I'm like, oh, I kind of get what he's talking about now.
Oh.
And especially if this is subjective as best. But yeah, for you?
Well, just think that teaching, we don't get paid a whole lot comparatively to a lot of professions with college degrees. And we have been taking a lot of hits in society lately. I mean, even my own sister will go off on her rants about how public school and teachers are destroying our society. And I'm like, would you listen to yourself? You are talking to me, someone who has devoted her entire professional career to being a public school educator. We are not like that. We're not trying to destroy the society. We don't have time in our curriculum to be trying to teach kids,
Marxism,
all the things that teachers are accused of teaching these days. I'm like, I'm too busy trying to get them to write a solid argumentative essay. And so, there's a lot of hits that teachers have taken. And one of the payoffs is having kids years after they've had you in class, still say, "Oh man, I loved your class. I learned a lot. You were my favorite teacher." I was stopped in my hometown. I hadn't lived here at the time. It had been a while. I'd moved away for a while. And a kid that I had taught years ago turned out to be the person who was standing in front of me at the gas station. And when she turned around, we saw each other. And she instantly gave me a big hug and said, "This just made my day. Seeing you just made my day." And
you're like, "That's great. Who are you?"
being that positive impact is really so important, because every single one of us needs to have people in our lives, all through our lives, that genuinely cared about us, genuinely believed in us, wanted the best things for us. And even if you come from a very successful family and very supportive family, it never hurts to have more people who are backing you. And if you don't have that supportive family, it's even more important that you have
Someone.
trusted adults that believed in you and say, "You can do this. I have confidence in you.
Right.
You're going to be okay." And I think that's really huge for people.
Absolutely. I agree. A lot of the teachers I've had, they were kind of like, "I'm here to teach you to the test and that's it." But the teachers I always remember are the ones that got creative. They still taught to the test, but like I remember his name's Bondurant. He had us like put stuff on the board. We would make a craft and then put it on the board with a magnet. And he somehow managed to tie it together in a month to explain that craft tied into whatever. And that lesson always stuck with me. I don't remember the nuances, but just like how, because I think it was a display of time, how things change over time. And it was just like, yeah, it was the same lesson. I could have gotten the same one from somewhere else, teaching you by the book. But he too, it was very similar to you. He used humor. He was very lighthearted. If you came in, as long as you obviously weren't like harassing anyone, he'd let you crack a couple jokes here and there before we started.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. We need a lot more teachers like you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It just, it's good for me too, as a person, to have the opportunity to work in an environment where that's okay, that's allowed, that I'm still showing I'm productive professionally. My kids are learning and they're doing good things, but everybody does better in a positive work environment. And so it's good for me personally too. So it's not that I might be tired at the end of the day, but I'm not emotionally drained from my job in the sense that it's sucking the soul out of you.
Right.
It's actually energizing to have an environment like that you can go to and feel like you're making a difference for people.
Yeah, I agree. That's especially, I wish I could have figured out how to make it work, but that's what I got when I was teaching martial arts. It was one of those, I went in and the change that would happen, the meaningful change, you can see it in their eyes when it clicks. It's the kind, unless you know what you're looking at, you'll never understand what we're talking about. But that was priceless, because it was an autistic kid I was teaching martial arts, and a very wealthy family. They were like two doctors kind of thing. So they could afford to pay my instructor like $1,000 a month to have me 3 or 4 times a week. And I only made pennies off that too. It's really funny. But he got a call within the last 3 months about that couple. I guess my 3 to 6 months with him, he is now able to socialize and talk with people. Yes, he's Yeah, he's able to socialize, talk with people. He still has his little quirks where his brain might run faster than he's talking. But other than that, he's learned to keep it. And they said it's all because of Josh and how he told him. And I jokingly said to my instructor, I'm like, well, I'm glad something worked because I was drugged down on heavy prescription and I was seeing shit and hearing things. I'm glad I got to him.
Oh,
So
yeah, I unfortunately have to do all my magic sober. So
that was the only time I've like on those heavy prescription drugs. That it actually like was total. Like I'm glad I got through them somehow. Like now I'm like super sober, and I actually get more of those comments. People reach out, they're like, "Oh my god, because of this, you helped me," and I'm like, "I did? Okay, cool."
that's really cool. Yeah, I had a girl years ago in my first teaching job. I'd been there a couple of years, but it was the first school I taught at. This was in New Mexico. And she moved in partway into the year. And she right away dated the biggest badass gangster in the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was in my class. And, you know, we were pleasant with each other, but she wasn't one of those kids that you knew had attached to you.
Yeah, you would almost think that like they hate you, right?
Or they're indifferent. You know, she may not hate me, but I'm just a class she has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years later, it was crazy. This is like 5 years later. I happened to stop at a restaurant. I don't know, it was like it wasn't Waffle House, but it was, you know, a breakfast place, IHOP or someplace like that. And I go up to the greeter, you know, at the hostess, and so that I can be seated. And she looks at me and she says, "Would you perhaps have taught in Bloomfield, New Mexico?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." And she said, "English?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Oh my gosh, come to find out that girl several times had asked people if they could possibly have been me, because she said she just absolutely loved my class and had always hoped she'd run into me again." And you know how it is. Like if you ask one or two strangers, "Oh, hey, Joe," and they're like, "My name's not Joe," you stop asking. She
Right.
was so intent in hoping that she would run into me so she could tell me
What a
what
massive
a
difference you
difference
have.
I had made in her life.
That's awesome.
Because, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and I walked out of there thinking, this is why my job is so important, because you never know. Even the kids you think you aren't reaching, you're probably reaching them. They just can't tell you in that moment.
Well, and then there's the long-lasting effect of like, is she a good parent now because of your teaching and confidence in her? Is she this
Yeah.
kind of thing? Like it's the ripple effects that even in our lifetime we'll never fully see. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I was talking about the guy earlier, like I wouldn't have known I made that big of an impact on person until they just so happened to go through one of their old phone numbers and found his number and they're like, oh my god, we got to call him, kind of thing.
Isn't that awesome? And, you know, when I was in high school, I was a freshman.
Mhm.
And there was a history teacher in my high school who'd been there forever. And she was a real battle axe. She really was. And she didn't like my brother and she didn't like me. Well, there was my freshman year, there was a senior boy who his girlfriend of a couple of years broke up with him and he was devastated. And he ended up shooting himself in the head and killing himself. And in his suicide note, he named two causes. One was his girlfriend leaving him, and the second was this history teacher, because she was relentless and harped at him and went after him every single day. And he said he just couldn't take it anymore. And I thought, oh my God, I never want to be the person that somebody puts in their suicide note as a reason for not wanting to live anymore.
That's a very, very bad reputation to have.
Yeah, and she acted like it didn't even phase her. It didn't change her a bit.
Of course it didn't, because her shit doesn't stink. She doesn't care. It was just a weekly.
And yeah, and I thought, oh my word, I'd already decided that I really wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. And I thought, I never want to be that teacher that makes anyone so miserable that they would rather die than be around you. I mean, that's a low bar to set, you know? But
Well, no, it's sad to say there's a lot of people that, yeah, they don't even realize they're that person.
yeah, I mean, it definitely opened my eyes. It made me determined that I was going to be a compassionate kind of educator.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
be concerned about the kid and not just the test scores. I mean, test scores are important and it's important that they learn, but also make sure that that kid is okay. And it's always nice when the kid who has a D and F in your class sees you later and says, or at the end of the year says, you know, I didn't do well in this class, but that was all on me. That had nothing to do with you, Mrs. G. That was me. That I didn't do my work. I didn't do what I was supposed to, but I learned a lot in this class. I may not have shown it, but you taught me a lot this year.
Oh, yeah. Those are the best. Because you make a meaningful difference in people's lives.
And, you know, when it comes to writing, I think that that's one of the keys is to be authentic and create characters and emotions that people can relate to and that seem real, because kids are also, they may not have any filter, but they're also good barometers on whether or not somebody seems sincere.
Yes.
See through fake really quick.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, it's them and animals, especially dogs and horses. They really see the personality of the person, because you can't hide it from them. They see the primitive energy or whatever you want to call it that we as humans can kind of filter out.
We tend to be trained to ignore those cues that we had when we were kids. And that's why, you know, there was the push years ago where they're like, okay, you know what, in the future, if little Susie or Johnny says they really don't want to sit on Uncle So-and-so's lap, don't make them, because they may not be able to tell you why, but they've got a good reason as to why they don't want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and so we're kind of trained to, well, you know, it's not socially acceptable to do this or, you know, be rude to this person or tell them, no, you can't, you know, do this or that with my family. We're, you know, in the workplace, well, that's the boss. So you have to smile and say, oh, yeah, hey, you know, thanks for stabbing me in the back. I really appreciate it.
It was just what I needed today.
Exactly. Man, can we do this again next Tuesday? And we end up lying to ourselves, but kids don't have that yet. And
yeah,
they can pick up on a lot of times when somebody isn't necessarily healthy to be with. And
yeah,
I think it's important to have, as writers, to have that transfer over into our writing too, to have authentic experiences for the readers to go along with in the story. Because even if it's some fantastical stuff in the end, like the little girl hovering over the dead bodies of the family she's just killed, even though that's not realistic, all the rest of it was real. You know, it felt real. That's what happens in families. This is, you know, the grandpa taking him out on the nature walk. Their conversation is the way little kids and a grandpa would talk. And just having insight into how to make readers feel, I think, is important.
Yes. But no, it's you touched on something like I've been working on like the last 2 weeks, especially with myself, because like I have all these stories in my head and I want to write them, but like the filter we were talking about, like oh dang Squash for kicking me in the ass, just needed that again. And in your head you're like, why do I keep saying that?
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
but like for me, for the stories, is some of this stuff in my head. It's pretty intense, like the killing at the end for yours. Can't wait to read that too. Um, but it's one of those kind of like tying back to the kids with no filter. I've never really minced my words around people, and I've been called a few choice words on how I present things. Um, but like in person, that never bothered me. But I was worried about, oh, the online thing, they're gonna just come after me and there's whatever. And like I had a weird epiphany last night. I'm like, wait, they're fucking cowards for saying it online. Why don't they just say it to my face? Oh, they won't.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. So
No, I was having a conversation with a lady that I know. Her boyfriend is also in prison, but we just can't understand some of the women in these prison wife groups and the things that they say. And, just their focus is all wrong on, it's just a mess.
right.
Without getting into that whole nightmare scenario. But, she said, you and I know this. You and I want to say, are you guys freaking stupid? Can you not see what's happening? Can you not see he's using you or this, that, or the other thing? And she said, but if we said it, everybody else in the group would jump on us and call us bullies.
Oh yeah.
And I called them badass chicken shits. Behind the computer screen, they would type out all kinds of nasty, ugly stuff to us, even though we're speaking the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cannot say that you're so broken because your video visit didn't happen. Girl, there is so much worse stuff in the prison realm than whether or not you missed a video visit.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that's nothing compared to riots and assaults and people overdosing in the wing where your loved one is. And, all kinds of horrendous things that can and do happen in prison. Your guy's not even gone to prison yet. He's in county, and you're going off about how destroyed you are because your computer messed up, and then the big bad mean county said that his visit was over. Well, you had a time slot. That's how it works. It's not their fault that your computer didn't work.
Yeah.
You can't say that you're destroyed and broken over a missed video call that she got to make up the next day.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, there are much worse things possibly ahead for you in prison. You need to toughen up and not be falling apart over really what's little stuff.
Right.
And so we tried to fairly bluntly but nicely tell her that, but really what we want to do is just be like, don't be so fucking stupid. Are you serious? We don't say that.
Where you're thinking it and you're sitting there like shaking your hands like, oh my God.
Yeah. Like, I want to say it. I want to say it.
Yeah. It reminds me, like, this one time I was working and we have this one lady that comes in. She's very, very left leaning. She makes the extremists seem nice, kind of thing. And she's all BLM, this and that. And it's just one of those, she's like, why don't you say anything? And blah, blah, blah. And I with my no filter approach, I looked at her, I'm like, why don't you get a tattoo of BLM on your forehead since you believe in it so much? And then she kind of like looks at me. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's exactly what you're doing. The only thing you need to do is put a tattoo there. Kind of
exactly.
thing. And then this and that, and she's somehow saying like, something about BLM. And I said, okay, there's two things I need to establish quickly. Otherwise, you're gonna make me seem like a batshit crazy bigot, racist, whatever. I said, BLM, the movement, I believe in. In America, especially, they have been treated very poorly. But I don't agree with the riots, the pillaging of businesses and tearing down statues. I'm like, side note, most of those businesses they raided and pillaged were Hispanic and Black people. So you can't say they were attacking white people.
They were servicing those communities, and now they don't have a grocery store.
Right. And that's where I told her, I said, I don't agree with that part. That part is stupid. The movement and this and that, great. I said, now BLM, the nonprofit, is an absolute fraud, and I can actually prove it with data. And she like looked at me, and I said, yeah, like, their tax statement came out. They're supposed to pay like 2 or 3% of whatever they made to the Black community. They didn't give a dime
Yep.
to.
You know what it reminds me of is PETA.
Oh yeah,
PETA actually euthanizes more animals than any other organization in the country.
oh yeah. And it's crazy, but no one wants to call them out because of the crazy ladies on the internet, and they're gonna call the whole big old mob and this and that. So I was telling her, I said, yeah, the government doesn't want to act up. It's the biggest like fraud of nonprofits, and they don't want to call it out because it's race. They're afraid of being called racist. They have rules that clearly state certain things. It doesn't matter your race, gender, identity. You break this, you're in trouble.
Yeah. They're the rules that everybody has to follow.
Right.
And isn't the point that you want to be treated like everybody else? Well, then you have to follow the same rules.
Exactly. And that's where, and she's like, oh, you're just some extreme right-handed Trumper, this and that. And I sent her a link. And I said, read this. This is a whole breakdown in simple terms. She's like, oh, but that's Fox News. I'm like, okay, if you're up for reading tax forms, I'll send you the Edgar page of their filing. And like a month later.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll tell you what, people on both sides have become completely unreasonable.
Oh, yeah. It's out of hand.
I have a family member who will get on their rants, and, when I've said, well, you might want to go to some, varied news sources to get your news, and then choose from there what you believe from the information you're getting from all sides. And she said, oh, well, I don't just get my news from one source. I'm like, really? Besides Fox, what do you listen to? Oh, she also listens to Newsmax and the 700 Club.
Those are all conservative leaning, though, but okay.
That is exactly this. I mean, you're going to get the same angle. Well, that's not diversification in your information sources. And
right.
She'll say things like, she'll go off and she will say racist things. And she's like, and if somebody wants to say that I'm racist because I believe that, fine, then I'm racist. And I think that's not something you want to embrace. That's
especially
not
in this age.
To be a moniker that you want to have hanging around your neck like a stone. Why would you do this?
Oh, no, that's the biggest question. Like, why would people even believe this? And I agree with you. I'm like, I can't find really, other than like my parents, I can't really find anyone that's like in the moderate zone. Usually they're extreme leaning one way or the other.
Yep. Well, you've got me to talk to now.
Yeah. Now I can be like, all right, no podcast. I'm just going to call her.
Exactly. Definitely. But yeah, it's just our society has gotten way out of kilter. It really has. And I'm not saying that there aren't things and wrongs that need to be fixed from the past, but both sides have started to become so militarized against the other one that it's squeezing out the middle. We used to have extremists on the right and extremists on the left, but then a really big band of centrists.
Yeah.
And now the fringes are becoming the majority and the center's getting squeezed in the middle. And if you don't claim a battle cry from one of the two sides, you're labeled by the other one as being what they hate most. If you don't take a hard left stance, the left calls you a right winger. And if you don't take a hard right stance, they call you a left wing nut. And it's like, I'm neither of those things.
Right. Well, one of my guests I had earlier on, we were talking, and she's a proud activist for feminism. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool and this and that. But I'm like, I'm just curious, has feminism gone to the point it's become the monster it's trying to defeat? And she's like, no, it's only just beginning. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. And then that's where she tried to interject something. And I said, okay, well, I don't have any references or proof I can give you, but I'm like, did you know that feminism and this whole dividing thing started when John D. Rockefeller, Edison, and Ford formed the Board of Education? They intentionally planted these seeds because if we're united, they can't sell to us. But if we're divided, they can.
Yes.
And that's where it took her like a month or so to like read different contexts and this and that. And she actually emailed, she's like, oh my God, you're right. She's like, I found in whatever material, like they did kind of just introduce the ideas so they could divide us. I'm like, yeah.
Well, Keith and I both said for years that party system, when you get especially to the upper echelons of the party system, they're really all on the same team.
Oh yeah, they are.
They just wear different jerseys as an intramural scrimmage so that the fans can know who they should be cheering for. But they all went to the same schools. They all belong to the same fraternities and sororities. They all belong to the same country clubs. They're godparents for each other's kids. You know, and also I've always said that whether it's special ed or race problems or whatever it is, whatever the issue is, that the powers that be don't really want the problem to go away, because if a problem is solved and it goes away, so does the funding for it.
Oh, yeah.
It goes to where the problems are. And they don't want their cash cow disappearing. And so they make sure that we're still fighting over abortion rights and we're still fighting over this and that, the other thing. Because as long as they keep us divided, we're not paying attention, and they just keep making the money and getting the power.
Oh, yeah. And it's crazy that I had to finally that lady that was calling me all those foul names in person, which, by the way, in person, it didn't faze me. But if I saw that online, I'd be like, oh, my God, I'm a terrible person. But
gosh, well, I hate to do this.
But you got to go?
Seriously, I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, we could.
Supposed to meet somebody with a puppy, so I need to
get going. Drive safe.
Anyway, we will talk again soon, okay?
Definitely. Don't be a stranger.
Sounds
now.
Good. Okay, and don't forget, people, that my book is called When the Cowbird Sings, Tales for the Midnight Hour. And it comes out hardback and paperback are available on October 28th, and they can be ordered through Kindle right now. They're up for pre-order.
Awesome, and I'll link all that in. Drive safe.
Thank you so much, George.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. So that was one hell of a call. This is going to be interesting to edit. Let's go.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're an awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.